Hello and welcome to the DERO Developer Talks. We're in episode number 2. I'm your host and facilitator, Quest. What we're going to be discussing about on this talk is identifying the needs for developers on DERO. And so that's really what the whole conversation is going to be about. We have several DERO developers that are on here. Many of the developers are veterans, but we do have some new folks here as well, which is very useful for us because we can get an idea, an understanding of a brand new person on DERO. If something is over their head, then we can kind of take a step back and kind of give them a big picture view, so that way even the newest or the most novice of us can have an understanding and begin developing on DERO. So with that, I'm just going to reiterate the structure for our call. So the purpose of our talks on DERO, I'm just going to reiterate that we're really trying to move the ball forward as far as getting people up to speed and developers working on DERO quickly, and usually in having that happen, these are public forum communications that we're having with developers so that we can talk about issues that they've ran into in the past, maybe pain points that they're dealing with right now, and what we can do to kind of accelerate or remove some of these roadblocks for them so that they can build some great unstoppable applications and websites and products and services that can help and support everybody in our community in this ecosystem. So recording and having these conversations, like I said, if you want to just text only and use the chat feature on Discord, you could do that. You could comment, you could ask questions. We'll be monitoring that as well, and I'll ask several of the developers that are on here to monitor the chat for me as I'm facilitating. That will help me. But it's important to have these regular discussions, and these are discussions that we're undertaking on a monthly basis. We might have a more consistent frequency than monthly. Maybe it's bi-weekly at some point. But right now we're doing monthly just to kind of get the discussions going about dev challenges and what we can do at bringing new developers into the fold with DERO. So we know DERO is a relatively new blockchain, and we know that mainnet is not very old, right? So we want to figure out how we get to a mature development environment, but still staying true to our privacy and our anonymity ethos. It's very important to all of us that privacy and anonymity is the core components and core values of DERO, and we want to stay true to that in all aspects of it. So for you as a developer, it's going to be useful for you to participate in these discussions because you're going to be seeing things from a different developer's point of view, and sometimes some of you develop very differently than each other, which is a good thing because we want to have kind of a diverse array of people that are working on these different projects. Attacking a problem at different angles can be very valuable. So it's really important for us to be able to have a diversity of thought on here. And there's no dumb questions. There's no dumb opinions. Every opinion is your own, and you feel free to voice that or not. But we're going to have a robust discussion regarding that. So the format was always going to be that it will be topic based. So initially we talked last time, even though Slicks wasn't here, we talked about XSWD, and Bezo gave us an overview about what it is and the capabilities of XSWD. And we'll always be talking and having a brief recap of the previous call, discuss any open items, some of the things that you might be responsible for on these calls, as we might be assigning homework for certain members as we move along. So we ask somebody, hey, can you follow up on this? Can you check on this and report back on the next call on this or that? These are things that we're going to be able to help document and move the ball forward as far as getting this knowledge base built within the DERO developer community. So everybody has a role to play. And like I said before, the more diverse feedback that we get, the better we are going to be going forward. So glad to have brand new users or new developers here. And definitely I rely heavily on the subject matter expertise of those of you that have developed multiple projects here on DERO to be able to give me some of that subject matter expert knowledge when we're talking about some of the things in specific. And then lastly, and I'll mention this on every call, please make sure this is not about me or I. This is, check your ego at the door. This is all about all of us. And this is, everyone that's here that's participating is wanting to build the community and have the community grow better together. But with that, we're going to start with the questions. And if those of you that are familiar with Lean Six Sigma, there is something that's called 5 Whys analysis. And this is analysis that's done to get to like the root of a problem. So let's say in manufacturing, and that's kind of where Lean Six Sigmas came from. Manufacturing, there was a a plant that was making cell phones, and there was some sort of issue with the cell phone assembly line, and something broke down, and the whole line had to stop. And then they had to go in there after the fact and try to figure out, okay, what was the problem? What was the root cause of the problem? Somebody was putting a part together, and maybe it was a different size, and it didn't fit, and it didn't fit flush, and the case couldn't close, and then the case didn't close, so the screen cracked. All of these different things could have happened in the assembly line, and the same thing for developing or building something like a privacy blockchain. So we're going to do some analysis and ask some deep questions about what is the root of some of these problems. I think a lot of the problems that I've experienced with just kind of gathering information on DERO is that information is kind of disparate. It's all over the place, and that happens in a young, immature ecosystem where there's not a single person disseminating all the information. Captain is one person, we believe, but they have a lot of responsibility, and so we can't just all say, "Hey, Captain, I need this. Hey, Captain, I need that." We need to be able to have this information distributed to a wide group of people, but also readily available at everyone's fingertips. And so we got to figure out how we do that, on a global scale. So 5 whys analysis, we're going to ask the question why at least 5 times to get to the base layer, what might be causing the problem. And that's going to be some of the things that we'll be having in this discussion. Any questions before I move forward? Hopefully you're not all on mute. All right, so basic needs. Let's talk about this. What is the baseline knowledge necessary to develop on DERO?
I can start with this during my nonsense presentation. I think I pointed out some of the points that I think were important. I don't think I have them all on top of my head, but I can probably start citing some. So whenever you want to do something on DERO or any computer, you have to have some knowledge of algorithms and how to tell a machine to do whatever you want. And that goes like for the basics of algorithms, like how do you control the flow of the program, how do you loop, stuff like that. So that may be a first one to start with.
Right. So this is kind of the the start and stop and the steering wheel of a computer program, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The basic functionality of it, right?
Are you referring to REST API knowledge?
No, more on how to program, like programming skills, how to tell a machine to if this happens, then do this, then do that for, 100 times, or do that until this condition appears, like these kind of things. Like whenever I'm coding something, whenever I create an application.
But yeah, so it's easy to continue building and keep bumping your head against the wall, to use that analogy. I'm sure most of us have ran into that experience as we were starting on our first DERO experience. So after something you're super passionate about, it just makes it all the much more fun and better for you as a developer.
What makes it more fun? What specifically are you referring to, Six?
The process of developing whatever your product may be.
And so do you have to establish a process or create one? It's not like there's an inherent process, right?
I would say you're correct. Yeah, I think we're all different in different ways that we could all get to the same result, but have a different manner of doing so.
Right. So how did you establish your process?
I think a lot of trial and error is probably a pretty accurate assessment for myself.
So that probably could be said for a lot of us.
I think so, yeah. Eventually I found rhythms.
But Quest, are you looking for like step that you want to put in a word or like presentation? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I mean, I really just having a thought experiment, just talking about our experiences and, the baseline knowledge necessary to develop on DERO. Bezos said, you got to have a basic knowledge of, programming, how to program something to loop, how to program to something to call a particular function, how to program something to, request something 100 times and then do a different result. So we're getting to the same thing, but it's really just kind of an open discussion. There's not a right answer, but we want to just talk about what is the baseline knowledge to develop on DERO? What does that look like? The basic and generic programming knowledge is one answer. Another answer is developing a process, right? Six was just talking about, a lot of it was trial and error, but he went through trial and error, and now he has a process for how he develops.
I could add something here. I had my smart contract aha moment when I realized that, because I had heard that, buzzword through Ethereum things and never really looked into it until I started learning DERO. But it made sense to me when I realized, okay, a smart contract, all you're really doing is you're building a JSON object, and as long as you understand key value pairs, you're just storing information in a key value on a chain. You write some basic functions that encode those value pairs. So if, like what Biso was saying, if this happens, write this down. If that happens, do something else, And so it's just very basic level. And when you start learning how a DVM basic works, I mean, the coding is very simple, and you're just writing simple key value pairs. It's one way to.
Right. So give me an example of a key value pair.
Well, if anybody's familiar with JSON, you have the name of the key is, basically a category, and then the value is, whatever that. If you think of it, how a database works, you have a field with a title, and then you have something in that field. I mean, even spreadsheets work like that, but you can think of whatever's at the top of the column in a spreadsheet as the key, and whatever's in that field is the value. But in JSON, it's just simple. It's something in quotes and then there's a colon, and then there's something in quotes. So it's very simple in that context as far as JSON text goes. But really, all you're doing is I finally realized smart contracts are nothing more than just a set of functions that write key value.
Yeah, in that regard, it reminds me of what we call serverless computer on a different cloud. So basically, you can write function in different popular languages, but that function is compiled and executed. But the beauty in DERO is that it's interpreted, meaning that there's no possibility for hijacking the bytecode like we have on Ethereum. And it's very similar to it's one of the best serverless compute tool that exists planet right now, because it's always encrypted and interpreted. So I could see a lot of processes that are running on serverless compute right now moving to DVM.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about computer knowledge of algorithms. We talked about the process to put together and execute. We talked about smart contracts and having a basic understanding of that. What else is considered what we would consider baseline knowledge necessary to develop here on DERO?
Also have the basics of how the blockchain works. What is a transaction? What is a block?
How about the account model, right?
Yeah, the account model, all that, yeah. Because that's going to be important as well when you try to execute, knowing where this code is executed and when.
Right. And how I'm talking about when it's not interpretive either, right? It's language model, so that's very important.
Would you add basic like system Linux knowledge as well?
I would agree. For me personally speaking, I used Windows years ago, and I've been using Macs for the last probably like 10, 12 years. And I used Linux a long time ago, like back when I was like originally like programming and out of high school and college and stuff. So yeah, I basically had to relearn Linux and all the commands, and it helped me so much when it comes to just like the CLI wallet and just running a node and mining and all that stuff. Like for me, Linux is like a godsend. But yeah, you have to have that fundamental baseline knowledge of it.
Yeah, more generally, probably command line. How to use a command line, because you could do everything. Most of the things you need for DERO can be found as well on Windows. It's just going to be a bit different than Mac or Linux, because Mac or Linux are almost like using the same base. They're Unix systems, so you will find like very very close commands. but on Windows it's going to be a little bit different. But the process will be the same. You could start up a wallet on Windows with the command line as well.
Right. And I mean, those of us that are in the privacy community, we already know, the NSA backdoors that Windows has and all these other things. Most of us are not, a fan of Windows operating system just because we don't trust that they have our best interest in keeping our information private.
Of course, yeah.
You could say the same about Apple too. So
absolutely, no, I'm not.
I came over from the Mac world, and I had to go through the learning curve of learning Linux and learning Darrow, and it starts to get complicated when you're not familiar with command line stuff. But once you get it, and it doesn't take that much. I mean, on the Mac you can do some command line stuff too, but I just never really played with that. I came from a graphics background, so it's just my tools were offline and Photoshop and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I use MacBooks primarily for the CPU and the performance, more than I do to for privacy or anything like that. It was really just kind of work related. All my work projects were all kind of Mac based projects.
But now everything's I prefer only doing things in Linux, and even on my Mac, converted them over to dual boot so I can boot in Linux or so. It is helpful to, understand the difference in operating systems, some traps and pitfalls, but, I find it much easier to just get things done through the command line now.
Absolutely. So what else? Is there anything else that we're missing as far as baseline knowledge? We got, a little bit of inventory of 4 or 5 things. Anything else we're missing for just the basics?
I would have cypherpunk ethos. I think that's the most important of all beyond the.
I think it's ideally, yes. I think that we got to talk to people where they're at. So I have a lot of friends that are in the crypto community, and some friends are big, hardcore, Bitcoin maximalists. Some friends are Ethereum developers. Some friends are just, they just try to make money on it. So I try to speak to people wherever they're at. And ideally, I'd like to be able to say everybody on Darrow comes from like that hardcore cypherpunk ethos. But, we're going to have people. Darrow's very new. Darrow's very young. And so those of us that are here, we're going to be one helping bring people in from outside of our community to have this community grow. They're not all going to have that. I think at the core, we should focus on those of us that, value that, but just know that I would rather us speak to people where they're at and kind of bring them into the fold and show them the benefits of what we could do here on this community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's hope for everyone. So let's give people a chance. I mean, they are in Darrow for a good reason, actually.
Yeah, even for people like me, What else, guys? Anything else?
We're the cypherpunks now that have to teach the others why it matters.
Exactly. Yeah, I got my old sweaty Star Wars shirt, and I'm ready to go. All right. So question number 1. Let's say that we answered that one. Let's move on to question 2. So how do we determine competency among the Darrow developer community? So it's one thing to have a baseline knowledge or understanding. We're going to talk about competency whenever I talk, because that's the language that I work in. I have a training and communications and marketing background. So I want to know, okay, there's knowledge to learn. How much knowledge does somebody know, and how do they prove or verify that they have acquired this knowledge? How can they demonstrate competency? And so for those of us that are developing on Darrow, how do you know where you're at as far as your skill set? Are you, 33% competent, 55% competent, 100% competent? And why would you think that would be valuable? I mean, if you're a new user and a new developer on Darrow, you want to be able to know that you can handle things and complex things when you're developing on Darrow. And you have to be able to know that stuff by determining some sort of knowledge transfer, taking in information, but then also problem solving. So like Six was talking about, figuring out and establishing a process. So how do we determine someone's competency among the Darrow community? Anyone have a venture to guess how we do that? And think about this. Think about dependencies. Go ahead.
Maybe some peer review.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. Peer review. So peer review of code. Some of you developers have looked at each other's code, and some of you guys document your code very well, and some of you guys have room for improvement, right?
Yeah, I think adding to 6 developer achievements speaks for themselves. And, all the code is, we're following open source guidelines. So, we can do peer review. We can introduce pipeline. We can introduce different check, help each other. Everyone's at different level. Big respect to Bizu and 6 trying to get there, but it's more difficult than expected. But yeah, man, the code is open source, so peer review definitely, introducing pipeline, check best practices. I saw another big developer spoke about a best practice in Golang that's not yet implemented in the DERO code. So, things like that. We're trying to be always at the leading edge of tech.
You said best practices in Golang. Elaborate more on that.
It has to do with the way the Golang code is formatted currently in DERO. Maybe Bizuli, it's ring a bell, but it's a common friend that raised that flag in a PR, I believe, but that wasn't addressed yet.
That's another thing too. Is where do we go to see the coding best practices on DERO?
Well, some of it will emerge a Golang based language.
For smart contracts, I think there are not nothing like there's no standard, there's no good practice so far, except trying to keep it simple, but as simple as possible. But yeah, we could definitely create some good practices for DVM, because it can be. It's an easy language to read, but it's not that easy to write for many different reasons. You can mess it up even while you're coding. You can mess it up quite easily because, for example, creating a variable is not the easiest thing to do. There is no except what I've started to build. There's nothing to check your code unless you're running it, stuff like that. So yeah, good practice definitely is a good answer here. We need to set them up. Yeah.
What about just like the design of things? So like one of the things that I noticed when I was just getting involved is that certain developers on DERO had dependencies basically on themselves. That like, if this developer wanted to, pull the plug on everything that has been developed up to that point, they could. Like, wow, that's scary. Like, just to think that there's some dependency or somebody has that ability to be able to, kind of liquidate or like wipe everything out from something that's been developed, that's probably not a best practice. That's probably not the way that we should be moving forward. But see, when we start off something brand new, it's rudimentary, it's crude, it's a tactical delivery to a solution. It's not a real solution. And so this is how we experiment and we get better and we evolve. But as far as smart contracts are concerned, besides Apollo, because I know Apollo's done a lot of work with smart contracts, who else has done a lot of work in the DERO developer community and smart contracts?
I did quite a bit with my last app, the Phoenix app. So that's my main.
Miso Apollo, is that the short list?
I'm experimenting. I've written some basic stuffs.
Dream says it's quite a contract.
Yeah, Dreams too. Yeah, I can imagine 6. Yeah.
I wanted to say too, when you were talking about the best practices, I find it. I mean, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And and a video is worth 1,000 pictures. I find it so useful for a developer to just explain their code a little bit on screen and walk through it. I know Apollo and 6 have done a great job with posting videos on the Odyssey channel where you can, follow along what they're doing and hear it and see it. And it just makes so much more sense than going cold into a Git repo. And now you're looking at 10,000 lines of code and you have to know what you're looking at. It's kind of confusing. You're working backwards to try to figure out what's going on, when in a 2-minute video, that developer could say, here's this new thing I built. This is how I built it. This is what it does. Come check it out. And a quick explanation. I know Biso demoed his project the last time we had this, and it was super useful just to hear them talk about it for a few minutes on screen. So there should be a standard where if you're releasing a new, Git repo or something, post a video explaining it real quick. And it would make people coming up behind, it would make it so much easier for them to just dive in and see what's going on there just in a quick demo.
I agree. That should be some of the best practices that we encourage in the community.
And then with enough of a collection of those, you can see how this person's doing things, or why they did it, or why they made that decision, why they closed that loophole so the whole contract can't be drained by some rogue developer, and pointing out those things. And eventually with enough reference material, the community will establish its own best practices just by hearing and seeing what other devs are doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And just that level of detail, that visibility is going to be how people build and grow. So one of the things that I thought was fascinating to me when I first started getting familiar with GitHub is I was talking to Apollo about this family tree website that I want to build and stuff. And he was like, oh yeah, well, you could take parts of private islands and you can kind of get started with that. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, you could just like copy this repo and then you can change this and that. And then you can kind of like have like a framework or like a shell of like what you want to develop. And I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, that's really cool. You could just kind of take something that somebody else has created. But like you said, you have to know how it works. You have to know what it does in reading and interpreting the code for you to be able to even have that information actionable, right?
Yeah, and developers, like the cypherpunks, write code, right? I mean, they don't want to spend time doing, explanations maybe, or maybe it's not their wheelhouse to put together a handy manual, or maybe they don't want to put voice on screen or something. But, I just think a simple explanation would be so useful for, new developers or anybody coming into a project. It should be like a little trailer intro about welcome to this repo. Let me explain a little bit about this project. Here's the code and here's what this function, piece does, and here's how that works. And it could be simple, less than 2 minutes, like a 2-minute movie trailer.
Right. Yeah. I came from the world a long time ago where everything was just RTFM, no explanation, just RTFM. If you don't get it, then you don't belong. So I'm glad that we've come a long way in the 20 years since I've seen some of the things being developed in other ecosystems. So how do we determine competency among the DERO community? I think if whatever you develop works, right, you did something right. And because everything being open source, you can see all of the fixes and changes that someone has to do to modify their code. So just as an example, if you wouldn't mind sharing, Six, what were the major changes that you had to make to when you were developing Dreams? Do you remember a handful of them?
Yeah, I think a lot of were definitely due to you could say the learning curve, or just doing new things. There were things that I wanted to build and attempted to build it, and as I was going through that process, I either learned or figured out a different or better way to do it, and there would be one of the changes that was implemented.
So you just iterated. You just okay, I did it like this originally, but there's a better way. So now I'm just going to change the code and I'm going to make it smoother, cleaner, faster, whatever. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Iteration's a good word for it.
Anything that you had to fix like right away because there was just some other issue or a bug or something?
There's definitely one that's close to home that I think a few of you might remember. And so there was a bug in smart contracts that was kind of more on the developer's side, I think I'd have to say. If you design a smart contract a certain way, you can leave a hole in there where it can be exploited. And I unfortunately fell victim to that. So that was definitely something I had to fix in pretty short order.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind when you talked about best practices, was that when everyone figured out that exploit, I think all the developers kind of updated their own practices. But yeah, it's something I always try to
tell people about when they start writing contracts. And
Is that the Get Owner one? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, the reinitialize bug.
Yeah, the reinitialize, yeah.
That's or exploit, I guess. And yeah, that's like one of the, I think the first thing I made a video on it, and I also have it in this secret handbook I'm writing. It's like one of the first lessons in there, and yeah, very important.
So as far as the second question, let's move on to the third now. So what are the skills, abilities, and experience that developers on DERO have? I know we've already talked about it some, but what I'd like to be able to do is for us to have, and again, this is a privacy community, so we're not going to be disclosing in full detail, but I'd love to be able to have a heat map or a dashboard where we could see, okay, we have 34 active developers on DERO. They have previously worked on X, Y, and Z type of projects. They have, 3 active GitHub repos that they're actively working on or whatever it is, just so that we can have an idea of where people are at and their background. So working with Apollo, I know that the work that he's done a lot was on smart contracts and a lot of stuff on the back end. And Apollo was hoping that I was going to help him be like a front end developer, which, I'm not a developer yet. So like I was like, well, I could try to do this, try to do that. So he assigned me a task to do as a student. And I went and watched the video. I replicated it on my local server, and then I try to do it on his repo. I try to, get a branch and start working on something, and just couldn't get it to work. And all of that to say this, we worked on something, and Apollo was like, okay, Wes is working on something, but I got to move forward. So he already went and did what I was assigned to do. But, a month later, 2 months later down the road, well, we get referred to somebody, to us in our group that, hey, there's a guy, he's a front end developer, and he's going to help us work on private islands. And then, man, as soon as that happened, like this guy is pumping out, different versions and different iterations and different ways that we have stuff laid out on private islands quickly, looks good, like just talking through it. So like, experience is very necessary, and it's important for us in the DERO developer community to know who is good at what, right? Because if we want to partner together, if we want to work on future projects, we want to have a good understanding of what everyone's skill base is, so that we can kind of bring the most important pieces together to work on a groundbreaking project or whatever that is.
I don't think there's anything wrong with naming him there. That's Red's Balls or Ball of Fire. I always forget if it's the
Red's Ball of Fire. Yeah.
Ball of Fire. Yeah. Total game changer when he showed up like that. Yeah. I was really like, okay, this is someone who's good at this. And it's really nice to have just different people in a team who can take care of different portions. And yeah, I'm working with him on a different project right now. And it's like for the first time, I feel like I'm only responsible for the thing that I'm best at. And it's so good. And I'm developing like back end or front ends. They're giving me the UI, and then I'm making it like functional. It's such a better way to work. So that's been a huge learning experience this year for me so far.
Yeah, this is what I want to do. So I want to link more, front end and back end developers together. I want to, because this is the thing, I want to have mentorship programs. I want to be able to have somebody join Apollo and be Apollo's mentee as Apollo teaches you how to do back-end development. I want to have somebody, a group of people join with Red and have Red teach people how he does front-end development. So that way we can build the skill base of everybody in our community.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I want to grow this community of developers so we can just build more unstoppable applications, like you said at the start of this.
Right. Like I'm not a developer, but I'm working with developers and I'm building my skills little by little. But like, man, I probably got about 10 different things that I really want to work on. Now I have to focus and prioritize. Okay, what's the most important one? I need to focus on that one first. But there's literally 10 things that I want to build and develop on DERO. And I need to be either one, have the skills myself to be able to do that, or work with people that have the skills and have them work with me on the project for us to be able to execute that plan, right?
So how do we make things more efficient in that regard? Because I think there's a lot of inefficiency with new developer that comes into DERO.
So how do we make things more efficient in new developers?
Yeah, and getting them up to speed so they can develop like quick, so they don't waste time trying to run their own node.
My answer to that is for us to be able to bring them, kind of package them the most current and most relevant information about development on DERO at their fingertips. So whether it's just one website they go to or one channel on a server, I want somebody to be able to have a one-stop shop to go and get all of the most relevant and the latest data on best practices, on prerequisite knowledge, on all of these different things at one source. So that way they go, okay, this is how we develop on DERO currently. These are the standards as of this date, March 1st, 2024. These are the standards. And whenever there's a new standard, comes out, we go get together, we agree on it, and then we update and have a new version of those standards.
What do you guys think about building a developer environment in a cloud, like in the most private way possible, and have new devs onboarded onto that ready to go developer environment?
Well, there's already the DERO simulator, right? Do we need to recreate the wheel? The simulator, what does the simulator not do that we need it to do?
Well, there's a lot it does not do, but there's a lot it does. So I see what you're suggesting, more priest, but I think there are more basic tools to be built or to be used first by devs. Some of them I created already. Some of them needs to be done or integrated into like text editors or stuff like that. Like, for example, when you're writing code, the good thing we have today in every major programming language is the editor is like telling you if you made mistakes, like basic mistakes. They can the editor can detect if you named a variable wrong, if you created a variable and it's never used, simple things like that are like rookie mistakes that we keep doing as experienced developers. But as we have the tools that tell us we do these mistakes, then we can correct and self-correct faster. So that's one side of it, of like the learning side, where we need to have like you suggested, the Quest, that they have the most like a place with all the data they need, all the information they need to be able to develop faster, and also the tools that correct on what they do, like they had a mentor telling them, oh, you made a mistake there, and they can self-correct easier and faster.
Yeah, so one thing I've got going is kind of like what you said. I think Moral Priest is a virtual machine image. Cryptoid helped me make it, and it just loaded up with all the different DERO tools I could think of, just on an Ubuntu image. And that's something I want to iterate over time to get more, up-to-date tools in there. And Cryptoid was saying actually that he wanted to send me a new one with Ubuntu, but basically to make it lighter. But yeah, basically he sent me the image, and then I went in there and installed various tools and then saved it. And I shared that with some of the DERO Dev 101 students. So they just have a virtual machine where it's just preloaded with all the DERO tools they would need to start developing. So it's not in the cloud, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to take that concept and bring it to have the tooling containers running on a Kubernetes cluster.
So then you could like visit through a browser, or what do you mean? What is the idea there?
You will be using the tool from, like not every tool can be used from a browser, but the one that can will be running off Docker container on a Kubernetes cluster.
Community cluster.
Like you would be running you could start your own node like within a few seconds, like just one command line. Like you would need to download the executable. You would like everything will be ready to go.
I don't know about this Docker community cluster thing. I'll have to look into that. But that sounds cool.
Do you know about containers? Yeah, Apollo. Maybe that's the thing you're missing here? The containers. Do you know about it?
Well, sure.
You'd have to look into it. It's really, really interesting because you could. It's sort of. It's sort of a virtual machine, but it's more. It's lighter than that.
Okay.
So
Yeah, the beauty of it,
Like you don't need a full operating system.
yeah, maybe more precise. You'll give a better definition of a container.
Is it something that just runs in memory?
No, it's running off the Linux kernel. So it's taking sort of like a copy of the Linux kernel and it's building from there. And the beauty of container, they build it in Docker. Docker is built in Golang. So that's the match in heaven with DERO being built in Golang too, because since the application you're running is native to Golang, you don't need those layer of compatibility. So you don't need to first have an OS like a minimum OS like Alpine or something lightweight. Then have your program library like Python, and then have your program in Python. Because if you're running a Golang application, you don't need the base OS and you don't need the layer of software library.
Yeah, and the good thing with that is that whatever, like when you make an image like that, anyone can run it, and you won't face issues of having the wrong OS or having like OS compatibility issues, like if you would on different Linuxes, for example. So you basically run the system that you want to run with the exact same environment, and that's pretty cool. And it sounds a lot like virtual machines. It sounds a lot like it's more of a recipe on how to build the virtual machine, basically, even though it's not. Yeah.
So we virtualize the application where it's packaged in one container or one sandbox, and you have everything you need to run one application. And we're spreading the load by apps. So instead of having like those big VM, where we just have those tiny, small sandbox that we can create and scale as we need and scale down also. There's many pros to running container, but it doesn't always apply. Like, for instance, like a developer is always going to interact desktop or virtual machines. But the server side, instead of connecting to server virtual machine, then you could connect to a bunch of container. Like any application that you start on your phone today, like those big app, like I don't know, like Tinder, they're all a Docker container written in Golang.
This is some homework for some of y'all to go and explore what containers are, and then report back what your thoughts, pros and cons of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm back on the conversation from earlier about proving capabilities on how do we sort of show to each other where we're at level wise. But Apollo has come up with a great way of doing these NFT diplomas, in his course, where he's giving out, a token that says, congratulations, you've completed this course. And now you have, something that proves that you've done this process, right? So, I mean, I think.
But how does it prove that he knows? How does it prove that they know that they have that knowledge? So,
well, I guess you have me there. I guess he could just send a token to somebody, but but my thinking was, what if we, made that into more of a microcosm and more open to the general community, where if you want to start proving yourself as a developer in DERO, you can go through this series of challenges. Like, can you write your basic first smart contract? And then, you submit it. Maybe there's a organization, a DAO or OAO that helps facilitate newbies. But if we gamify it a bit, where they start at the basics.
Well, this is something that I've thought about too, because like me as a brand new user in like July of last year, what if I like you said, what if I earned a badge or I earned an NFA saying I wrote my first smart contract, and then I earned an NFA because I ran my own node, right? And then I have another one. So like we can gamify.
Exactly. And they can get progressively more complicated. And then you can see somebody, it's like, oh shit, this person's got 100 badges. Like they know what the hell they're talking about, right?
And think about that. So think about that integration with the tool that Bezos is building. So like I click on a user profile on Phoenix, and it has Apollo, and it says, expert smart contract developers develop, 50 plus or 500 plus smart contracts on the Darrow blockchain, right? So you can have all of these badges based on your user profile or based on your wallet address, and then you can see people's verified skill and competency, right? Do you run your own node? Are you mining on Darrow? All those different things we can gamify and basically have those badges or those NFAs to show and prove competency. Not only that, but like prove your commitment, like, because there's a lot of people in the Darrow community don't really talk about, anything that they're actually doing on Darrow. They got a lot of comments, they got a lot of complaints. Don't really see like them actually building or developing or even trying, because that way we can help us determine, all right, is this person really passionate about the project, or are they just like bitching and complaining to bitch and complain, right? I mean, show me your proof of work. What are you working on? What are you developing? What nodes are you running? Show me that you have some level of competency before I just hear like somebody having, a 3-day bitch session about whatever they don't like on Darrow.
Yeah, exactly. And even if that NFA, even if it's an unlimited supply and there's no other value in that token other than just showing that you've completed this task and this set of tasks and you can prove yourself that way. So it would take somebody or an organization to verify, or, they'd have to submit it somewhere. And so there'd have to be like some sort of review process, and that might be a burden, but also, it could make it fun. We could create bounties, for projects that people, if Paul is working on something and he needs help, well, you can earn a badge by completing a bounty on a project, or, things like that. Just really, people would just incentivize everybody to come in and start playing in Darrow.
Yeah, I want to have a Darrow leaderboard. The top 10 Darrow users or the top 10 Darrow developers. Here are their badges. Here's their accomplishments. This is what they've done.
Sounds great.
So how I came from the corporate world, professional development. I did a lot of CPE certified course. So, risk and control and business analytics and all this different stuff. And how the training world does CPE or continuing education, CE credits, is they have an ISO standard. So there's an ISO standard, International Standards Organization standard for certification. So if anybody has a SANS or a cyber certification, it's the same set of standards that we're talking about here. So there is a whole governance of structure of how these standards are to be executed and performed. There has to be sign-offs. There has to be chain of custody. All of that stuff is entailed in you getting a certification, whether it's a Network Plus or it's a MCSE or whatever it is, or even like a cyber one, like I mentioned. I managed a whole cyber master's program for a Fortune 50 company. And so I have intimate knowledge of this ISO standards. I want to be able to build that level of expertise course in Darrow for us to have true industry standard verifiable NFAs for competency on all these different things, whether it's just running a node or developing on Darrow. I want to have, knowledge checks and quizzes and exams and simulations, so that way we can really test and verify that these people have the confirmed knowledge that they say they have on developing or whatever it is on Darrow.
Yeah, and verifiable is what, anybody can put anything down on a piece of paper and submit a resume and say, I've done this and this is my credential, but it doesn't mean anything, right? This is more verifiable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're all about that, right? We're all about, what is verifiably true. I don't want to trust anything. I want to be able to verify it. And that's what's most important. So the third bullet point here, getting back to the basic needs, I want to be able for us to develop a dashboard of how many developers that we have on Darrow that are active. How many projects have they worked on? What have they developed? Is it front end stuff? Is it back end stuff? Is it a wallet? Is it this or that? And just have like a basic inventory of that. So that way we know where we're at now. And then if we have any gaps that we've identified, then we can maybe recruit or ask for people to kind of do a deep dive on some area that we might need to fill the gaps, like we're talking about now, gamifying. Who here is able to right now start building and gamifying everything on DERO? Do we have a developer here that can do this and work on this full time? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'd say Six and I have been going down this path a little bit. Definitely not full time. I think we're both busy with lots of stuff. But yeah, we have some standard of NFAs for accomplishments. And recently we started a new thing, which is mission tokens. But yeah, this is certainly like, I think we all want the same thing. And I've said before, I'm happy for DERO Dev 101 to be eaten by something larger and like have more participation and like, yeah, because it is a big vision that I think we all share. So that's my thoughts on it. But I actually have to go. So thank you. But yeah, I'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Thank you. So Apollo's jumping. I'm gonna wrap up here in the next, like, let's say 10 minutes. If you guys want to stick around, if you got to go, I understand Apollo's got to leave. But I have 2 other slides that we'll talk through. Like I said, we're going to take maybe 10 more minutes, 12 at the most, and then we'll wrap up, okay? So we already talked about a lot of this stuff. What's the prerequisite knowledge necessary before developing on DERO? So one of the things that I'm working on that Asylum and Cryptoid are asking my help for is I am getting a thorough intro to blockchain course that is catered specifically for DERO, but really kind of is all-encompassing. So I'm pulling in open source resources from all over the place, even MIT and Stanford and all these other places, and putting together a robust intro to blockchain course. So like there's a, what is it? There's a new website somebody just developed. It was like very basic. It's like getdero.org or something like that. So I want to be able to link this document on that website so that people brand new that really don't know much about anything, they can go to this website and they can say, okay, here's the basics of just like, what is a blockchain? How does it work? How do blocks work on DERO? What's the account model? This and that. So this is, I think, prerequisite knowledge for anybody that wants to be involved in this project, not just to be a developer, but just if you want to have an understanding of what blockchains are and how the DERO blockchain works. This is something that I'm working on in the back end. What other prerequisite knowledge do you think is necessary?
Just to bounce on what you just said, you might contact Secret because he knows he has someone in his server that is building like a knowledge base website, similar to the Dots.
I think that's the guy that I'm talking about, though. I think it might be the same person.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'll
probably
check
the same. Yeah, I'll check with him.
Is it the getdero.org guys you're talking about?
Getdero.org. Yeah.
It's probably that. I don't remember the name. Yeah, nice. Other prerequisite. So what I said is like programming. Probably, yeah, a bit of programming. Maybe a course, like an intro course on the basic language. On algorithms. And maybe an intro as well to the basic language. I'm not sure if it's relevant to that
Basic language.
Yeah, not sure.
It's funny because I was in high school and I took a summer course on computer programming, and I went to my local hospital, and they had these computers, these mainframe computers that were liquid cooled. They were cooled by water, and literally a giant room with fucking just machines everywhere. And it was like 60 degrees in there. And these were like old mainframe computers. And they were run off of basic COBOL and I think Fortran or something like that. Those were like the programming languages. They were fucking dinosaurs. Well, it was cool. I learned a lot, though. I learned a lot about that.
So yeah, programming probably.
Algorithms, basic, generic programming. What else, guys?
A REST API interaction if you want to interact with the...
What was it? What interaction?
REST API interaction.
REST API.
But it programming encompass that as well. But
yeah, what about the wallet API? Is the wallet API necessary for you to know in advance?
No, as long as you know like how REST APIs work, it's then discovering a new API. You just need the documentation basically. So it's not like a prerequisite before you develop.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a weak point with DERO. The documentation on the API is it easily consumable. Well, you could put it on a website and consume it directly from a website.
Right. Well, I don't know anything about the DERO Foundation, but from what I understand, they're talking about doing RFPs pretty soon, requests for proposals for updating their documentation and stuff. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to, because I'd love to be able to help them dive deep. And I'm a very experienced technical writer and that kind of stuff. So I'd love to be able to have the DERO documentation be as full and as robust as they possibly can be.
Yeah, great.
I think it's important to highlight to just the greater community that, you can also just be a front-end developer with no blockchain experience, and there's still room in DERO to help out on projects. You could just be a graphic person or a UI developer, and, like what Moral Priest is saying, basic API REST knowledge. Every front-end developer has that. You just be really great at React or TypeScript and know nothing about blockchain, but you could still come and crush it in DERO just by building awesome front ends for teaming up with people like Apollo and Six or whoever to, to build front ends and know nothing about blockchain.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That was my path. I started because I knew front end mostly, and then got to build a front end for the first decks, and that's how I got into it. So.
And pretty much every front end developer knows how to use a REST API by now, right? That's just basic as JavaScript, or right. But people don't even really write HTML and JavaScript anymore. They're just using React frameworks or Vue or whatever, the basic frameworks. So there's a lot. That's there's a big community of just front end developers out there that could jump on board, start improving DERO, or you could be a writer and just write awesome articles, or a podcaster, and just do interviews with people. There's lots of room. You don't necessarily need to be a back-end smart contract DERO developer to build on DERO.
Yeah, and I have a large following on LinkedIn. And so one of the things that I'm accessing and utilizing is I'm putting out weekly articles and just little blurbs about working on blockchain. And this is really helpful for me, because now I know which kind of audiences to kind of help bring into the fold. So like, if we need front-end developers and they don't need to have a lot of prerequisite knowledge, great. Because the next 5 articles I'm going to be writing on LinkedIn is all about front-end development and how you can get an internship with me, learning how to work on some of these projects and get some blockchain experience.
Yeah, I just think it's important to highlight that there's many different paths you can take. First path is get some DERO, right? And then contribute your skills to making the project better in whatever way you know how.
But think about it. If you have an investment in time, if you have a time investment in working on a project, your natural inclination is like, hey, I better buy some of this stuff, because I'm working on this project and I know it's going to be good. So, obviously.
So maybe prerequisite is get some DERO and set up a wallet, because even that, or get off of Atlantis if you haven't done that yet.
This is the thing too. So we're having developer talks right now, right? So one of the things that I want to work with the community as well is we're going to have DERO marketing talks. So we're going to do a monthly push. Hey, we're going to have people establish new wallets. Let's go out there. Let's get creative. Let's go have fun with it. But how can we get people to establish a wallet, DERO, buy some DERO, show them how to use the Ngram wallet, show them how to use the G45, whatever our favorite wallet is, show people how to use that, demonstrate that, and then also, what you can do with that. Buy your first NFA, buy your first NFT, see how it shows up in your wallet, see how you can claim ownership, all of those different things. There's so many different aspects of the developer aspect is one part, but there's so many other things that we could do to contribute to this ecosystem.
We should be marketing to lawyers. We have a better contract system, legal system than all the lawyers have to work with right now. Get some lawyers over here to start developing real, verifiable contracts.
Legal language. Yeah. That's something that's very true. There's a lot of applicability to DERO in the field of law, in the field of healthcare. Think about something, a fully encrypted blockchain where you have people's private user information, that you don't want it to get in the wrong hands.
DERO's multi-signature DERO wills, right?
Right? So many different solutions that are available that are out there that we're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg on. All right, so prerequisite knowledge, we talked about that. How does one acquire this knowledge? Is there a roadmap or links to all of these resources? I'll just ask that in the community. I know G45 had a repository on GitHub on like all the active projects in DERO, which I'm not sure how up to date that is, but does anybody know a one-stop shop or a single link anywhere that they can find and it has the most, kind of robust resources of information for developing on DERO? Does anybody have a link to that or something like that?
Actually, I've been working on rounding up the same amount of resources too, just to kind of acquire it and figure out, what's going on. Yeah, just for myself. I know Xylem's busy with putting together the noncensus.io website. That has a lot of, just people's information gathered up, but yeah, it's not exactly what you're saying. Yeah, that's a resource, noncensus.
Yeah, I use that new revamped noncensus site basically every day now because there's so much good stuff on there. So yeah, I mean we're definitely becoming more and more a kind of a go-to resource for everything DERO. Anything else, guys?
There is that website called Arcane Sphere. I think they have a pretty good list in general happening in DERO community.
Yeah, I was familiar with that. I haven't visited that in a little while, but you're right. Arcane Sphere is definitely one. Any final questions or comments before we wrap up? I know we're over on time, and I want to respect everybody's time here.
I'll just say I appreciate you doing this. We need more content creators, more people explaining what DERO is about. I know that was like Kalina's path when she came in. She just started. It was hard to find like tutorials or instructional things in the beginning, so she started making her own. Paula started making his own. Six just started building. I mean, as soon as mainnet was live, it was, just there was nothing to go by really other than DERO docs or docs.dero.io. But, it was great to see like people going through walkthrough videos, showing more content on whatever YouTube or Odyssey or whatever channel. We need more of that. But, and thanks to those people that took that journey. And because now there is a bit of a library of DERO walkthroughs and informations, and instructions and tutorials. So we need more of this, and thanks for doing it.
No, it's my pleasure. I remember my my wallet address, Questfordesigns everywhere on DERO. But the work that I'm doing and the work that anybody else is doing is just the next man up philosophy. So like, if you want to get involved, it doesn't take any buddy, but just somebody that has the will and the determination to see the value of DERO and want to be able to contribute to the community any way they can. And this is what I'm doing. I know my skills and abilities, and I'm working with those skills and abilities to move the ball forward in the DERO community any way that I can possible. So I appreciate everybody's time.